Hello, my name is Nessa Rose Brooks and I am a sophomore at Goucher College. My research project examines the role of unconscious biases in the pronouns writers use, more specifically how gender stereotypes impact pronoun usage. My research question was, how does the pronoun writers use he, she, or they differ based on context when the gender is unspecified? I conducted a survey consisting of 6 writing prompts which all left the gender of the subject unspecified. I then analyzed how many writers assumed the gender of the subject and used either he or she versus how many writers used the singular they. I also analyzed in which context either male or female gender was assumed more often and if this reflected traditional gender stereotypes. The large majority of the survey responses, 71%, assumed the gender of the subject, while only 29% used the singular they. There were clear patterns with regard to which prompts were largely assumed male, which were largely assumed female, and which were split evenly. The prompt, write 2 to 3 sentences about a scientist working in a lab, was largely assumed male, which suggests a persisting gender stereotype where the occupation of a scientist is associated with the male gender. The prompts, write 2 to 3 sentences about an elementary school teacher leading a class, and write 2 to 3 sentences about someone cooking dinner for their family, were largely assumed female. This suggests persisting gender stereotypes where the occupation of an elementary school teacher and the act of cooking dinner for one's family are associated with the female gender. Additionally, and somewhat surprisingly, the prompt, write 2 to 3 sentences about a professor leading a class, was largely assumed female. This may indicate a gender stereotype where the occupation of professor is associated with the female gender. However, taking into consideration traditional gender stereotypes, it is also likely that this is an anomaly among this study's participants. The prompts, write 2 to 3 sentences about someone reading a book, and write 2 to 3 sentences about a student doing homework, were split evenly. This suggests that the act of reading a book and the occupation of a student are both perceived as gender neutral. Given the number of responses that assumed the subject's gender, 71%, it is evident that the participants in this study assume gender while writing about a subject whose gender is unspecified, either consciously or unconsciously. Considering the limitations of this study, this is not necessarily indicative of a larger societal trend, although given previous scholarship in similar areas, it is likely at least somewhat indicative of a larger societal trend. While keeping in mind how difficult it is to make recommendations regarding such a complex and sensitive issue, there are steps forward that individuals and institutions can take to begin to weaken the unconscious biases we all hold and strive for greater inclusivity for people of all genders. One of the most important things is to educate people about the power and implications of pronoun usage. 3 influential areas where this could be carried out are at the high school and college levels and employee training in the workplace. I also want to advocate for a general call to action among the audience for this research. The hope is that you all think more critically about the pronouns you use in the future. By putting in the effort to recognize and combat the unconscious biases you hold, you can engage with the world in a more inclusive way. When writing, or for that matter when speaking, one of the most important things you can do is make an effort to use gender-inclusive language, particularly the singular they. If enough people begin to think critically about the language they use, it might just lead to a brighter, more inclusive future.